the rest of the panel go up as well, please? Thanks.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Great for the panelists to join this session. I think some of them you've already met. You met John from Bracade, Natasha from Genband. The other panelists are David Chan, who's the head of sales for Asia Pacific for BD Global Services. You have Mark, who is the head of global product development for Verizon. And we have Tang from China Mobile, but he's not based in China, he's based in the US. So that's a very interesting panel that we have for this session, which is rich pickings from transformative business models. And if you've been in the telco industry for some time, I think transformation is both a buzzword as well as a journey. And it depends on which part of the equation you are to say, is it a journey, is it an end state, or is it just a buzzword? So I'll just start with a very quick 3-slide presentation on what is the importance of transformation before I move on to the panel discussion. Can I have the slide? Okay, so I think the question is how do you make this happen? And why am I saying transformation is so critical? And this is the fundamental reason. If you really look at telecom 10 years back, it was a very different industry. The industry was all about connecting individuals, right? And today you have more SIM cards than the number of toothbrushes, right? So it's that prevalent. It's a product of that nature. Now don't ask me, is it because people don't smell when they sleep, right? Right. So, but the next 10 years is about growth in connected devices. It's about connecting devices, and today you can find that people carry 2 to 3 devices when they're mobile, and this is only going to explode. So it's all about, and when you add M2M and other things, it's really an explosion in the number of devices. Earlier, I was very happy that I was part of the telecom industry because it was a hot, explosive sector, but when I speak to my banking friends, they say it's not a hot sector anymore. They're not going to invest much. So, and really, it's a more of a mature sector, even in emerging markets. If you look at even markets like Thailand and Philippines, we have seen, revenue declines even in developing markets. And the third point is very important. Earlier, telecom was about what you deployed outside. So it was associated with the fiber, with the base stations, the heavy infrastructure which are laid on the ground or outside. But next 10 years is about telecom inside. How can you enable business models, not just for yourself, but for other industries? How can you collaborate on smart grids? How can you collaborate on intelligent transportation? And these are some of the requirements of other industries who are facing very different dynamics. Healthcare is another good example. So how do you get inside these industries is going to be very critical. I'll not spend much time on this slide. You know this. There's been a major revolution on the user devices in terms of data growth, in terms of your ability to monetize data growth. We saw some slides yesterday. If you look at it, the industry is maturing. Apps are eating your lunch. So if you look at it today, a Skype or a Facebook is a communication platform, and what you have is just a communication service. So how are you going to compete with platforms of other device players and internet players? And of course, cloud is another opportunity for telcos to enter IT services or offer IT as a service. And all these, earlier this slide, when I presented this 5 years back, it had to be 4 or 5 points. But now the number of drivers of change have really increased, right? We did some survey about enterprises on telecom operators, and they realized that the transformation is very critical. The drivers include data growth on mobile. On the mobile side, the need to offer a better customer experience. And the important thing is it's all about business agility. Because today, if you look at a telco environment, it takes around 6 months to develop a service, whereas over-the-top players can do it in 6 days or month or 6 weeks. So it's really about business agility, and really the CEO is involved in the transformation journey. right? So, and I think this is what everybody is doing. So business transformation, network transformation, customer experience transformation, and also internal transformation. So all this put together is what you can do to really realize the value from transformative business models, right? So I'll start off the panel discussion, and I guess the background I will use for the panel discussion is this debate which we always have. Really, telecom operators are like the highway business. So the pipes they build, the connectivity they build is like the highway. And now you have these sleek-looking cars, and the data traffic nature looks like this. So, it's about this conscious choice about whether you want to be a pure connectivity provider or how you add content, other richer services to make it a more sexier business, right? So anyway, let me start off the panel discussion by the first question I want to ask, since it's a cloud topic. Is cloud really a transformative business model for telco? And I'll start with Mark.
So, in answer to that, yes, I think so.
That's a short answer to start off with.
Yeah, no, it is certainly as far as telcos, and we were kind of discussing this earlier. The cost of bandwidth, etc., is being eroded quite significantly in some regions. Other regions it's not so bad, but across the board there's a lot of erosion going on. So obviously we need to stay in the marketplace and stay in business. And we see very much the cloud being the way in which we can take our business and move forward. And without that, I think we'll be struggling quite a lot. As far as Verizon is concerned, we're putting a great deal of focus in the cloud and cloud products and services, and we are going through various acquisitions at the moment, which I'm sure everybody is aware of, which reinforces our intention that cloud is very much the way in which we're going to go forward with our business.
Okay. Anybody who disagrees from the panel that it's not so transformative as it appears? Jerry, go.
So we'll be sure. Definitely it's a yes. Actually, this comes from two fronts. So first is, Mark said, on the network bandwidth side. Because with cloud, now more and more traffic goes through our carrier bandwidth, carrier network. So if we don't transform, that means it's like highway. If we constantly have increased traffic, it means you have more cost to maintain, to increase capacity. The second, I think it might probably be much more important, at least in the context of China Mobile, is with the emergence of mobile internet. I think if we don't do anything to transform our business, we're starting to lose customers. Say, if you look at Apple, its product, iPhone, App Store, you start to ask yourself, if you're using iPhone, especially if you use iPod Touch, are you really a customer of NTT, or are you a customer of Apple? So for us, I think two core assets we have, one is the network, another is the users. So from these two fronts, I think we are facing both challenges and opportunities enabled by cloud.
David,
Yes.
Hello. BT has done our transformation for almost the last 15 years on IP, on convergence, and our experience is transformation is not really something you can choose to do or not to do. Basically, when you don't have margin, when you spend your money and you don't see return on investment, you need to change. And the change is transformation in all aspects. Now, cloud computing is something that we have been doing for the last 2.5 years, and we see that is something that we have to do because we are not just talking about infrastructure as a service or software as a service. BT is actually talking about communications as a service. And we want to create differentiation, and cloud computing actually allow us to do that. You cannot buy a box from other Sullivan, from Verizon, and say this is cloud computing. You cannot do that. You have to do it yourself. You have to make it yourself. And this is how you create differentiation. We target cloud computing to the top tier customers, the top 500 customers that BT has, around the world. I don't see a lot of strong business case if we just go after the SME, because in fact, if we just do that, 2-3 years after you put in all the investment, I don't see the return there. But with the top tier, global VIP 500 customers we see a very strong case that we invest, we do R&D, we put money in, and we make ourselves one of the best in the world in cloud computing.
Okay, staying on the topic of the cloud, right? If you look at the market size, the bigger market is there in the software as a service layer, and that is typically not a domain for the telco. I mean, infrastructure as a service is still probably 7 to 10% of the cloud market. So, how do you think that the telco should play this? Are they going to remain at an infrastructure layer? And if not, how do they acquire the capabilities to also play in the software as a service layer as well?
I'll take that one to begin with, if that's all right.
Okay.
So, as far as what we're trying to do and going forward, certainly the infrastructure piece, infrastructure as a service is the foundation, as is the network. Those are the two key things to be able to deliver services from, whether it's a platform as a service or a software as a service capability. So, certainly we're looking at a number of things around things like whether it be SAP in the cloud, SAP CRM, for instance, and other sort of platform services as well as software as a service capabilities, and to have pre-packaged solutions. But again, the key to all of this is that, when we're talking to customers these days, it's not necessarily we're going in and talking about cloud. We're asking our customers, well, what is it that you need to achieve? And then we come back to, okay, we can deliver this service or this capability from the cloud, and we can tie it in with, maybe some additional security services or some other professional service capability. So really, the infrastructure as a service piece is essential, but it's only a piece, but it is the foundation. Okay?
Natasha, are you helping operators in this domain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Genband is an infrastructure provider, and in fact, I was just thinking, all of you guys sitting at the table happen to be our customers in one way or the other for different projects. From our perspective, what we are seeing is clearly infrastructure as a service being a very key driver going forward. We have been involved in significant number of network transformation projects with some of the largest service providers across the globe. But we are also seeing that now service providers are looking to deploy newer multimedia services, in many cases not towards a consumer, but more towards large enterprises. These could be large, new age telephony services and so forth, and adding value from that perspective. So this is not necessarily software, but platforms.
More enterprise.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we are seeing the interest in these types of applications growing tremendously.
And Jerry, is this the reason why you're based in Silicon Valley to augment the software side?
Well, first I would say 10% of a large base is still a very significant number.
Yes. Okay. But so you're saying that you still remain in that market, not go out?
Well, another thing to look at is look at your key strengths, your weakness, right? So for telco operators, your key strength is really horizontal layer. I don't think, and also I believe the software as a service, the market will be very fragmented, a lot of vertical applications. I don't think any telco service providers can sort of claim, okay, this is my domain for that particular software.
Another related question I have is, and this is to John, what should be the role of service providers, especially on the private cloud, right? Because I think that would be something where the enterprise will do it themselves. Even now, 93% of data centers are still captive. So how do you see that the role of SPs in the private cloud business?
I'm sort of outspoken in believing that, especially from a transformational standpoint, when we talk about this being transformational, we're really in our infancy here, And what we're talking about in most of the things that folks are throwing out as examples of progress is really just options for implementation. They're really not transformational. We haven't really seen the second generation of what happens when innovation is truly embraced and represents fundamental leap forwards in business and then kind of builds on itself. So, in terms of my observation when I talk to CIOs and when I talk to folks who are really on the transformational end of this is that where they can go today, as this is kind of infancy, is it's very custom and one-off sort of solutions. If they want to do something fundamental and change in the economies of their business, they have to choose a trusted partner. They have to structure a secure ecosystem if they're putting anything other than the most rudimentary information into this process. And then they have to build something that they can actually validate is going to be acceptable to their compliance officers and things like that. I mean, that's not a very extensible model, but what it's going to represent is the engine that we're going to innovate off and then be able to replicate. So service providers, I think what they represent in the short term in extending this is tight partnerships with customers.
Okay. So you're saying there's a role?
I think there's also something else to mention in that, certainly the private cloud is very important, but I think as service providers, we owe it to our customers to be able to create and work with our customers, and as you mentioned, partner with our customers to be able to take and leverage the best of both worlds, so the public and the private. So, certainly for our customers, for those people to get the benefit from cloud services, they need to look to or work with service providers to be able to establish what it is that needs to retain in-house potentially or be outsourced from a managed perspective, and that private cloud piece, but what also can be put into the cloud, and how can we leverage that so that we can offer greater efficiencies for those organisations and flexibility for those organisations. So you have a combination of both. I don't see that there's going to be private cloud. I don't see that, or just private cloud. I don't see that there's just going to be public cloud. It's going to be a hybrid solution whereby organisations are going to have a bit of everything.
So let's broaden the discussion a bit. We said that cloud is a transformative business model. Could you also give examples of other transformative business models which service providers would embrace? It could be on the mobility side. It could be, offering wholesale services to other brands. So any thoughts on that from panel? Jerry, if you want to start off, you're very interested in the content side, I thought.
Well, I think if you look back in the industry, which happens before I was even born, say, look at the electricity industry, right? Well, maybe when Thomas Edison and the GE, everything started. One thing I want to say is that a lot of change and transformation is not planned or expected. It just happens. Industry evolves, right? I think the cloud enables, a change at a similar scale. Say, if you look at cloud, you look at an ecosystem, right? Someone has to maintain the highway. Someone maybe has to produce cement for the highway. For the cloud, someone has to produce the hardware, the storage for the cloud whole ecosystem. Someone has to run the cloud, has to guarantee a certain service delivery, guarantee the SLA. And someone has to create the content or the application and run on top of the cloud. So the question for a service provider is, what kind of roles you plan to play in it? You don't have to be pigeonholed in one or two certain roles. You pick roles based on your sort of leverage your existing asset, what's your organization's strengths, and also basically admit your weakness. And I think the key is for the service provider to do a lot of experiment to figure out what are your new partners, what are the values you offer to your customers. So I don't think we can say, okay, this is the way we want to do, this is the way we want to do it. But another thing to look at is if we don't do any change, sometimes it's a derogatory word to say, okay, the service provider basically will be maintain and operate a dumb pipe. In my mind, a dumb pipe never exists. No pipe is ever dumb. The only thing is you have to maintain a balance. How smart is your pipe? Basically, if we done pipes, like you have done highway, all the trucks, semi-trucks, tank, roll on it, bicycle, there has to be a certain level of regulation. So this is our own, so we have to own our network and maintain. This also is critical to deliver a satisfactory value to our customers. But as to, do we get to really go to the content and application level? I think you can never say never, but you have to be really understand what you can do. So I think for us, my question is that we have to do change, and then we have to do a lot of experiment. We have to get into the content, but we will let the customer see what value we, as a service provider, we are actually delivering.
So how do you balance, a lot of these new services have a lower profitability. For example, IPTV at very low profitability for a long time. So how do you manage your portfolio? Or there's some new areas which are transformative and not have the same profitability as voice.
Well, my take is sometimes even if it's low profitability, if the market reality is you have to take it, you take it for competitive reasons, right? Because if your competitor is offering similar values, some same service at lower cost, if they can manage to manage their internal cost structure to deliver such service, you have to do the same thing. So profitability is relative. If you are doing better than your competitors, you've done your job.
Okay.
Actually, I have a couple of comments on this. So you talk about the experiments. We are actually involved in many such experiments with some of the service providers. And those experiments actually range from very small to very large. At a minimum, I agree completely that I think service providers cannot end up becoming dumb pipes. For the simplest and the most basic reason is you will just not be competitive if you do not provide the quality of experience to your end customers. So if you have a highway which is congested, it's a congested highway, everybody is unhappy. So at a minimum, you need to be able to differentiate, manage your traffic, to be able to give the quality of experience that your SLAs have guaranteed. Then we're also seeing a level with many many service providers experimenting to see if they can actually create new tiered service models where you create pricing models based upon the types of services the end consumers are using, types of applications that are being used, the different profiles and so forth. And there are hundreds of applications around that.
And Verizon or BT working on these cross-industry business models, like helping telcos sell to the, creating customized solutions around smart grids or healthcare solutions, because that's where some of really the ability to use connectivity as a means to for productivity enhancement is being seen. So any thoughts on cross-industry models?
So certainly I think we already have a couple of solutions around healthcare where they're prepackaged solutions that incorporate delivery of cloud services within those overall solutions for things like healthcare. We have a number of other ones that are in planning right now. As far as what we're doing, as far as other telcos, we already have, as mentioned this morning, that we already offer the service as like a resale service. We can also deliver the service so that customers can actually take the services that we have and sell them onto their services or their customers. And then later on this year we'll have all of the APIs opened up, so anybody can come in and draw upon those APIs and leverage the Verizon infrastructure, but deliver the service as their own in reality. So there are some significant things, and we have already a couple of partnerships with other regional or local telecoms providers who are using our services today.
We actually have a very similar example. Genband has a very strong application server business. And these application servers are actually targeted to service providers who then deploy them for large or medium-sized enterprises. We recently launched an app store and have since then opened up our APIs to a developer community. This is not your consumer developer community, but enterprise developer community. And we have seen many of the enterprises of our service providers leverage these open APIs to build vertical applications. So we see this as a very positive step.
Okay, the last question is, we know that there are a lot of good things that can be done in terms of transformation, but what's the biggest challenge for the telco to do this? Because all this can be done, but what's the challenge? John, I guess slightly outside of perspective.
I think the biggest challenge is thinking about the model in fundamental different ways. And one of the things I would just throw out there is we've used this road analogy a bunch of times. One of the common models that works for leaders in most industries, especially that drive fundamental new levels of experience for customer, is first of all, it's not a road. It's not a standard road. It's a toll road, right? And if you want to drive up revenue, there's two ways you can do that, which is you can raise your tolls. You don't have a lot of flexibility there, or you can get people to drive more, right? And drive on your toll road more. And I think it's understanding what it takes to get more vehicles on the road to be able to benefit from that and give destinations for those cars to be traveling to. And I think they need to think about that whole ecosystem. They've kind of gotten themselves into a pricing model where they don't scale revenue with usage, and that's got to be broken, and they've got to start recognizing that this is kind of a demand-based architecture where creating compelling and exciting demand that's on the other end of the line is got to be part of the equation.
Okay, so I'll probably end the session there. I think that's a very good analogy. So it's a road of transformation. The only thing is we don't know where the toll gates are. So with that, I conclude this debate. We can take one question from the audience. If there's, yeah.
Good afternoon. In the interest of go-to-market and talking about new business model, I think many service providers, one way or another, end up with some sort of partnership. Recently in the US, I'm not sure if that because of part of strategy or part of the immediate reaction. Spring tied up with Google, providing Google Voice on one number. In the wake of announcement of the AT&T and acquisition of T-Mobile. Google is going around the world, and I'm not just using Google as an example, but there are many people like Microsoft and Google, which on one hand could jumpstart the service provider entry into cloud market. They have the credential, they have the credibility. But on the other hand, there is always the paranoia on the service provider side. Is Google really a friend or foe? Google has not just Google Voice, but as late as recently, a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they are deploying fiber infrastructure. To them, it's an experiment in Kansas City. So I just want to hear from the panel what's your view on that sort of partnership. Thanks.
Partnerships are way to go.
Well, for BT, we have very clear position with working with the over-the-top players. In the IP voice, strategy, they are our key customers. We are very strong. We are world leader on global IP exchange. We have the most IP minutes in the world today. And for those over-the-top partners, they are our key customers. Regarding our top 500 global customers, they will not go to Google. They will not go to over-the-top players because they look for quality, they look for resilience, they look for peace of mind. And a company like BT has been their partner for like the last 25 years. And the stock exchange, the financial market customers, they are not just going away, overnight because Google is Google. So yes, they are coming into our space, but equally, I think as a company like BT or Verizon, we are also going into the IT space. And nobody is going to stop it, and it will just happen. Telecom IT will converge, communication IT will converge. And we just have to do what we have to do. key here is when we do our transformation, we don't try to be everywhere with everyone, just like 50 years ago when we sell just telephone line. Today, world is more complicated, and you only have so much money, and you have to focus. When we got an area that return on investment is 5%, we walk. We walk, and that's why when we talk about cloud computing, I emphasize we are very clearly positioned to the top tier, VIP global enterprise customers. Not everybody, because otherwise we put a lot of money in. Okay, we don't see a strong business case, and my CFO will not approve. As simple as that. And it's similar for another interesting discussion that the industry always want to talk about, TDM voice, BT Walk. We go for IP voice, global IP exchange. We partner with Tata, and that's a very good example of how innovative and transformative we are. And just don't try to be everywhere with everyone like 50 years ago. It doesn't work.
It's an easier question on the enterprise side, but I think the question was more on the consumer side. But anyway, I think this is a debate which will keep continuing. So in the interest of time, I'll just end the debate right away. And thank you so much for your time and insights for this debate. So a round of applause for the panel.